Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this New Tech Lightning Round at InfoComm Connected. My name is Parker Dunbar. I'm the Manager for Support and Applications Engineering at ScreenBeam. Now, like many of you, the last few months have been full of changes in my daily routine. I haven't been going into an office. Instead, I'm working from home. My dogs love it, but it's been difficult to keep engaged with my teammates when we've been physically apart. We found some great new collaboration tools that help us stay connected while we're physically separated, but we know there's no substitute for in-person interaction. And at some point in the not too distant future, we expect to be making a transition back to the office. We're not alone in knowing that transition is coming. I'm sure most of you recognize Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. In a recent interview with the New York Times, Nadella warned to be on the lookout for what's lost during this time of remote working. He said that what he misses is when you walk into a physical meeting, you're talking to the person that's next to you, and you're connecting with them for 2 minutes before and after the meeting. In those 2 minutes, employees and teams are building community. Nadella worried that right now we might be burning up some of that social capital that we had built up in our time working together while all of us are remote. At ScreenBeam, we know in-person interactions drive collaboration and create value. But the way those interactions look is changing now more than ever. What are those changes going to look like? Well, our meeting spaces need to change to adapt to social distancing. The WHO and CDC have begun to put out guidelines for organizations to follow, like reducing the number of chairs in conference rooms. But in addition to reducing the number of people in a room, we need to minimize the number of physical shared contact points between employees. Think about the last meeting room you went to. There was probably a cable with some adapters, or maybe there was a dongle to get connected to the display. We want to eliminate those common contact points wherever possible. While traditional meeting rooms are functioning at a reduced capacity, one option for organizations is to go ahead and leverage non-traditional meeting spaces. Displays in hallways and other common areas could be used for stand-up meetings, as long as employees can easily get connected to the display. Finally, digital signage provides another way to leverage existing displays when they're not in use for meetings. Companies can use digital signage to remind employees about precautions they should be taking, or to let them know how many people are allowed in a meeting space. With ScreenBeam, you'll be able to make all these changes with a single device. We're excited to share our flagship product with you, the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus wireless presentation system. A wireless display receiver that connects to existing displays, projectors, or room control systems using an HDMI cable. Designed for enterprise and higher education customers, the 1100 Plus has all the features that end users and IT administrators demand from a wireless presentation system. It's built with commercial-grade components, and our remote management tool, CMS Enterprise, is included with the ScreenBeam. There's no additional costs or ongoing fees for management or support or firmware updates. With an MSRP under $1,000, the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus is an incredible value, making it easier for organizations to deploy a uniform solution to all their collaboration displays, conference rooms, or classrooms. Now, I personally spend a lot of my time talking to resellers and IT directors and administrators, and what I hear from them time and again is that they need a wireless collaboration solution that's easy to use. So that's what we focused on with the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus, creating a solution that's easy to use with no apps to install or dongles to connect. ScreenBeam 1100 Plus offers end users mobility, freedom from being tethered to the display. Now, of course, we recognize that ScreenBeam isn't going to be the only product in your AV ecosystem. So we've made sure that ScreenBeam integrates into your meeting rooms and can even reduce the number of devices required in each collaboration space. Ultimately, we want to make sure that end users and IT administrators have the best wireless display experience. Let me show you just how easy it is to start using ScreenBeam. Native wireless display means that users can bring their own devices into a collaboration space and get connected in seconds. Whether you're using Windows 10, Mac OS, iOS, Android, Chrome OS, there's not going to be any apps to install or any dongles to connect. Being able to connect with your own device is key, and users are going to be more comfortable with their own devices. They already know where all of their documents and applications are. There's nothing that they need to find. IT doesn't need to worry about training users on a new application or how they're going to distribute that new application to guests who might not have administrative permissions on their devices. Now, I've talked to a lot of IT directors who were looking for a wireless display solution, and they all want to make sure they can support any device that comes into their collaboration spaces. But for many, the scenario of why anyone would want to connect from a mobile device to a display is unclear. But when you combine ScreenBeam with cloud productivity services like Microsoft Office 365, any device can drive a PowerPoint presentation or share a spreadsheet or a Word document. So those mobile users are able to share all of the content that they've developed on other devices with others with just the device in their hand. ScreenBeam also enables social distancing in the workplace by allowing the use of displays in common areas and other non-traditional meeting spaces. These displays are perfect for stand-up meetings where employees can easily distance themselves. Participants can share content from their mobile devices directly to the display. Now, any space with a screen can function as a collaboration space. No cables or dongles are needed to get connected to a display. So an employee's only physical contact point is their own device. And those displays that are used for stand-up meetings and all the other displays that have a ScreenBeam 1100 Plus connected can also be used for digital signage. Digital signage can drive awareness of social distancing guidelines and best practices. And the ScreenBeam can play back digital signage content, including videos with audio, instead of just showing a static background. ScreenBeam 1100 Plus supports HTML5 digital signage, so companies can use ScreenBeam as an endpoint for their existing digital signage content. Now, as technology continues to evolve and has evolved, we've seen more and more devices inside the conference room. More devices means higher costs, challenging installs, and an ongoing management burden for IT. It's complicated. The ScreenBeam 1100 Plus has an HDMI input because we recognize there are still scenarios where a wired connection to the display is going to be preferred. Administrators can configure how that HDMI input works and how the wired and wireless display sessions interact. In single view mode, the wired input always takes priority. When a new device comes in and connects wirelessly to the ScreenBeam, the wired input is going to continue to be displayed. But in quick switch mode, the newest connected device takes priority. So when a device comes in and wirelessly connects to the ScreenBeam, the wired input's no longer going to be shared. By consolidating HDMI input and auto switching into a single device, there are now fewer devices in each meeting space, and that reduces upfront costs and an ongoing support burden for IT. Now, at ScreenBeam, we know that enterprise networks are complex environments, which is why we designed the 1100 Plus with 3 separate network interfaces. Let's imagine our organization, and we're going to keep things simple and just say we have 2 networks, one for employees and one for guests. And for security, we're not going to allow any traffic between our guest network and our employee network. Well, with just the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus connected to a display, Windows 10 and Android devices with Miracast can connect for wireless display. And because this is a peer-to-peer connection, those devices could belong to employees or they might belong to guests. They could be connected to any Wi-Fi network or they might not be connected to a Wi-Fi network at all. We can also connect the Ethernet interface of our ScreenBeam 1100 Plus to our employee network. So now employees connected to the network using AirPlay or Google Cast can discover the ScreenBeam and connect for wireless display while they're still connected to the corporate Wi-Fi. And administrators can even configure the ScreenBeam to have Windows devices connect over that infrastructure connection. Separately, we can connect the secondary wireless radio of the ScreenBeam to our guest network. So now guests with AirPlay and Google Cast can connect to the ScreenBeam for wireless display. Now, there's going to be some scenarios where you might not want users to be connecting to either infrastructure network. And that's where our local Wi-Fi mode comes into play. Administrators can configure the local Wi-Fi to broadcast an SSID that devices can connect to and directly use for wireless display. Those administrators can even configure bridging or internet pass-through from one of the infrastructure networks to the local Wi-Fi. So that allows now devices that are connected to the local Wi-Fi to also have internet access. Any given deployment might not use all of these different connection options. We allow organizations to mix and match so that they can choose the connection paths that best suit their needs. No matter how the ScreenBeam is set up, the traffic is always separated completely between the guest network and the employee network. There's never a routing path for someone who's on that guest network to access resources that are on that employee network. Obviously, if you're considering bringing a new technology into your environment, security is going to be chief concern. The ScreenBeam 1100 Plus has 3 layers of security, including 802.1x, TLS 1.2 with AEX, and a configurable connection pin. We could go on for a whole hour about security. So if you want to know more, please reach out to us. But for now, let's just say security, check. So that's the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus in 10 minutes, or as close to 10 minutes as I could get. ScreenBeam offers organizations a wireless display receiver that's easy to use, with no apps to download and no dongles to get connected. Our native approach to content sharing reduces the number of common contact points in organizations' meeting spaces. And that allows organizations to rethink meeting rooms and expand their options for collaboration spaces. With features like digital signage, HDMI input with auto switching, and multi-network support, the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus is truly a one device for all spaces option. And when you have one device in all of your collaboration spaces, users have the same connection and sharing experience everywhere they go, whether it's a small huddle space, a lecture hall, or an executive boardroom. Thanks again for joining us for this New Tech Lightning Round at InfoComm Connected 2020. If you'd like to learn more about ScreenBeam, please reach out to us or stop by our virtual booth. We've got a few minutes now to answer your questions, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jay Taylor, our Senior Director of Strategic Alliances, who's going to be joining us for the Q&A.
All right, thank you again, Parker and Jay. All right, thanks, Parker and Jay. So again, it's your turn. Remember to add and upvote questions using the Q&A window. Here's our first question. So how well does it do with motion videos such as YouTube or Netflix?
Parker, do you want to take this question? I just want to give you some talking time.
Sure. So, the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus is 4K capable. So, if you've got 4K content and you want to push that through, you'll get the full video experience, a full audio experience out of that content.
Awesome. Another question that came in: how do you prevent unauthorized screen sharing? Do you use some sort of rolling pin code per room, in addition to selecting the ScreenBeam to share to?
That's a great question. So the ScreenBeam has a customizable device name, so you can make it really easy for users to identify which room they want to get connected to. And we have multiple pin settings and options. You can have a random pin that gets displayed on the screen, or you can have a static pin where it's set for an individual ScreenBeam, but it's never displayed on the screen. So if you had a very high security room and you wanted to make sure nobody accidentally shared into that room, you could use the static pin option.
Awesome, great. Could the ScreenBeam be centrally controlled?
Absolutely,
yes.
And that's included.
Yeah, so we do include a remote management application called CMS Enterprise that allows you to be able to manage these devices across your entire campus or your entire network infrastructure. So if you have buildings in Singapore and Europe, you'd be able to see all and manage them all, or you could actually lock them down so that only the Singapore office can manage their devices while the super admin sees everything.
Awesome. And this question comes from, I believe it's Heidi Callison. For ScreenBeam, how is the latency and sound for video sharing?
So the latency for sound and video is fantastic. In terms of the actual latency between when content is shown on your display and when content is shown on the ScreenBeam in Miracast peer-to-peer can be under 100 milliseconds, on the order of about 70 milliseconds. And the sync between video and audio is perfect. So if you're watching content, even if there's a little bit of a delay that's introduced, the video and audio is going to match up, so you're going to see people's lips, and you're not going to get that poor dubbing filmed effect.
All right, we'll do one final question for the two of you. how many people can be connected at one time? And are there moderator tools for multi-user collaboration?
So you can have up to 4 presenters connecting to a single screen at one time with the ScreenBeam application or with the native applications built into your device. We also have a product that we target for education called Classroom Commander that allows up to 50 people to connect at the same time, and that is in a moderated fashion.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Parker and Jay, for that presentation and answering all those questions.